Hello everyone! Today, for this Animation Friday, I thought it would be interesting to discuss my favorite Popeye episodes. Ah yes, the Fleischer Studios Popeye episodes. These have been very iconic for being very popular in the 1930s. I actually think that Popeye was actually ended up being more popular than Mickey Mouse at some point, at least from what I've read. But I don't think that stayed for all that long because, again, the Fleischer Studios unfortunately gave up after some time. But the interesting thing about Popeye, just to give you a little bit more history before I go into the ones that I particularly enjoy watching, Popeye was actually a comic strip. Unlike a lot of other animations that were based upon just based upon creative thought, Popeye was actually one of the ones that was actually a comic strip that became popular. It's very interesting because usually we associate animation with comic strips because that was really the first real bits of what animation really was. But unfortunately, most of the majority that are popular actually didn't, I think, come from comic strips, at least from what I could tell. But I think Popeye is one of the ones that actually came from a comic strip that maintained its popularity for a significant amount of time. Now, the first episode that I wanted to briefly discuss is Popeye the Sailor. I think this is one of probably the earlier episodes. It's actually interesting because it has Betty Boop in it. She actually makes an appearance in the Popeye cartoon short, which is kind of funny because you usually don't see those kinds of crossovers that often with the Fleischer cartoons in particular. I think usually Betty Boop and Popeye were kept fairly separate, but this is the one where they actually appear together. Betty Boop's actually a hula dancer in the short, but the reason why I like this short in particular, not only just because Betty Boop's in it, but also because there's, again, some creative animation. It has sort of the traditional kind of Popeye formula. And what I mean by the Popeye formula is that a lot of the cartoons that revolve around Popeye revolve around this sort of quasi not really love triangle, but still kind of it's like a love triangle, but one's pretty much an abuser. Basically, this is where we get the Bluto-Popeye competition for Olive Oyl, which is the female protagonist of the cartoon episodes, really, because she's probably in, I think, the majority of them, at least, from what I could tell. This is, I think, where we would see this sort of rivalry kind of start, because again, I think this was actually one of the earlier episodes, and it's really focuses in on tying into this kind of formula, but I think doing it in a way that that doesn't revolve around so much the competition aspect between Popeye and Bluto, but on Bluto just being a bully. And it's kind of strange because at some times, in some episodes, Olive Oyl is kind of okay with the idea of Bluto competing with Popeye for her affections, and then other times she's like, "Save me, Popeye!" So it's kind of confusing. I'm like, oh, wait, what? How did all of a sudden you start giving props to Bluto? I don't understand it. So it kind of has that nonsensical aspect to the show, but I liked how here he was just a bully and Popeye rises up, eats his spinach, and saves the day. And that's how a lot of the episodes run. It's really like Bluto, Popeye, olive oil. Bluto, Popeye, olive oil. Popeye competes with Bluto to maintain his affections for olive oil. That's how a lot of these episodes go. I'm not kidding you. So it's sort of hard to find ones that actually are unique and sort of drift away from this formula. But although this one sort of sticks to the formula, I still like the fact that it was one of the ones that didn't go for that idea of trying to make Bluto sort of a sympathetic character, because he's really not. When you really look at him, he's really not a sympathetic character. So I like just the fact of him being a bully. Like, I don't like the idea of them trying to really compete, because again, he's just unworthy of anybody's affections, at least me personally. That's, I think, though, all I can say in particular about that. But that's that episode, Popeye the Sailor. The next episode that I wanted to briefly address is the House Builder-Upper. Now, again, this is something that drifts away from the traditional Popeye formula. Instead of the plot revolving around this love triangle, this competition, or basically, Popeye going out to save olive oil. This episode in particular focuses on the on olive oil basically having her house destroyed. I don't think it actually shows how her house was destroyed, but apparently it was destroyed. And then Popeye and the hamburger guy, who's named J. Wellington Wimpy, they both come over and they try to repair her house. So that's really the episode, and it has some little funny creative bits with how they build the house, and then it has all of those, kind of traditional animations that revolve around, these kinds of jokes that are based around, creating something. You'll see this too with, like, Silly Symphonies with, like, Mickey Mouse when they, like, build a boat. You kind of see these similar things that animators were doing to kind of, get some laughs out of the audience. And the interesting thing is usually within Popeye episodes, he is successful in the endeavor he's trying to pursue. But here, you'll see that that's actually not the case. But even if he doesn't succeed, he's still not bitter. He's not, angry. He still maintains that happy, upbeat attitude and says, I'm Popeye the Sailor Man. I'll just keep trying. It's okay. And I think that's just something that's very cute and I think really works for those kinds of cartoons. So, yes, again, one of those ones that I think, again, sort of strays away from that kind of formula. The next episode that I wanted to briefly address is For Better or For Worse. And this episode is actually really funny because even though it does have that traditional Popeye formula of Bluto and Popeye sort of competing for olive oil, it's done in a very funny and comedical way. It's almost like the Fleischers wanted to just make fun of this cartoon and of this romance and of this setup. Because basically what ends up happening in the beginning is Popeye realizes he can't cook. And so he's like, I need to get a wife. And so he goes to this place where you can go get wives. and he picks olive oil out of all people. And guess what? Bluto picks out the same chick, which is olive oil. And I don't know why she would want to, I don't know. It's confusing why she would want to put herself in such a position as to be married off. But she she ends up being called because, again, they're in, like, a different room, I guess, where all the women are who want to get married. And the guy that's at the front desk, he calls her up, and basically it leads to, you know, again, that kind of traditional competition between Pluto and Popeye. But I like how the ending is just hilarious. There's one point where, again, you sort of have the competition between Popeye and Pluto for olive oil, and basically the character Pluto tries to get olive oil to go to the like basically a state office where they can be officially recognized by law as married. And the interesting thing is olive oil doesn't know what's going on because she's like, she has that veil thing that some women have when they get married, and I don't get why you would have such a thing over your face like that. I would never get a veil, ever, if I was to get married. Basically, Popeye ends up showing up just in time, and I think at one point Olive Oil like removes her veil, and the interesting thing is before she well, technically while she was being announced, she like did her makeup and everything, and so she kind of looks like a clown, like she doesn't look like herself. And then when she like pulls over the veil and like Popeye sees her face, he's just like, oh no, screw this. And so it ends a completely different way than the way a traditional Popeye episode would end, because usually it's just like he wins over Olive Oil's affections, but here it's kind of the complete opposite, and it's pretty hilarious. It's definitely, I think, worth watching, because it's one of those, again, episodes that strays away from the traditional formula. Now, another episode that I wanted to briefly address is Shiver Me Timbers. The interesting thing about Popeye, and at least Popeye episodes, is that usually you don't see him on a ship. You'd think that Popeye would be on a ship. If he's called Popeye the Sailor Man, why isn't he on a ship for the majority of the episodes? Makes no sense. But it does have its little funny and cute, scary moments for kids. And then, basically, it revolves around Popeye, Olive Oil, and the hamburger guy, Wimpy, going on a ghost ship. And it basically shenanigans go from there, and I like how, again, it's not something that you would expect out of a Popeye episode. Yes, he has the typical motifs, and again, this isn't every Popeye episode. I can guarantee you I don't think there's any episode that does not emphasize the spinach. The spinach is always there. But I do like how it leads to, again, these kinds of creative animation, creative moments for the animation to just sort of play around with itself. And again, I like how the fact that it's on a ship, and it kind of makes sense that that they would incorporate something else more with it. And I like how they made it sort of a haunted ship instead of like a haunted house, you know, like I think that really works, and I think that's very creative, and it's definitely not one of the more traditional Popeye episodes, so props to that episode. Now the next one, the second to last one that I wanted to mention is Strong to the Finch. The interesting thing about Strong to the Finch is that it focuses on kids who don't want to eat spinach, because Olive Oil has this, I don't know if it's maybe like some kind of daycare, I guess, and basically she brings out this bowl of spinach and the kids don't want to eat it. And so Popeye tries to convince them throughout the entire episode to eat spinach. And it really focuses in on this kind of health thing. I wonder if Popeye as a cartoon was trying to get kids to be healthy. Even back in the olden days, they were trying to get kids to be healthy. But it really focuses on that aspect of spinach being a good source for kids to stay healthy. And it takes some surprising turns, too. It's, again, not that traditional kind of Popeye episode. I mean, he does help save the day, but again, the kids sort of learn things, too. And they have to go through certain obstacles, too, in order to sort of have a conclusion to the episode. So I think it definitely works and is one that is worth recommending. And you usually don't see kids in a Popeye episode, so it's kind of nice to see that there's like kids, you know, because this is a cartoon series that's supposed to be for kids. But the last episode that I wanted to mention is called Adventures of Popeye. Now, the interesting thing about the Adventures of Popeye is that it's actually parts of it revolve around being live action. Because you will see in the beginning of the episode there's a kid and he's being bullied by some stronger, taller kid. And again, he has a Popeye comic strip, actually, in his hand. And he, even though he gets beat up, Popeye sort of comes to life and tells him sort of the importance of standing up for yourself and, you know, to eat your spinach and then you'll be strong. And so that's really, I think, a creative way of getting a message across to kids, like having the original comic strip emphasized, but then also putting in this sort of this message of standing up for yourself. And I like how it basically the whole episode goes through Popeye's various past adventures and you know, sort of briefly addresses how he overcame certain obstacles. And so I think that really does get kids inspired and get kids motivated to make sure that they're staying healthy and at the same time sort of standing up for themselves and not letting the world, you know, run their lives. Like, let themselves be independent and take charge. So I think that's really what was behind the message of the episode and what and resembles, I think, a lot of what Popeye represents. You know, sort of the underdog with the heart of gold who will stand up and always win the day, and no matter what happens, he's Popeye the Sailor Man. So, yeah, I think that's really though ultimately all I can say about all of these episodes, but I hope that you check them out if you're interested. I'll be sure to put links below to all of these episodes. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a great day, week, month, and year. And I hope to see you all in the next video. Take care.